I never believed in hauntings, not really. Sure, I watched all those paranormal shows at night when I couldn't sleep, the ones filmed in night vision where people whisper into the dark, "Did you hear that?" But that was television. Real life is quieter. It's boring. Nothing ever happens. That changed the day I moved into the house at the end of Willow Creek Road. I found the listing online. A 2-story farmhouse sitting just beyond the edge of a forest, about 40 minutes outside Helena, Montana. The price was absurdly low, the kind of low that should have made me suspicious. But I was broke, recently divorced, and desperate to start over somewhere quiet, somewhere that didn't remind me of my old life. The landlord, an older man named Mr. Harper, met me there. He didn't say much, just handed me the keys and told me to keep the doors locked at night. I laughed, thinking he meant coyotes or maybe bears. But the way he looked at me, his eyes not quite meeting mine, I remember feeling something tighten in my chest. The drive up to the property was surreal. The last stretch of road turned into gravel, and the trees pressed closer and closer until I felt swallowed by them. When I finally saw the house, it looked wrong somehow. Perfectly symmetrical, freshly painted white, but something about it felt like it was watching me. The front porch creaked under my feet as I stepped up. The key stuck in the lock for a moment, like the door didn't want to open. When it did, a smell of dust, wood, and something faintly metallic drifted out. The first night was uneventful, mostly. I unpacked my boxes, set up my bed in the upstairs room facing the woods, and tried to ignore the constant wind pushing against the walls. Around midnight, I heard what I thought was a knock from downstairs. Just one. I froze, waiting. Nothing else followed. I told myself it was the house settling. Every house makes noise when it's old, right? But that's not what it sounded like. It sounded deliberate. The next morning, I went outside with a cup of coffee and noticed something strange. Footprints in the dirt near the side of the house. Bare feet, small, like a child's. But I was alone. There were no kids nearby. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away. I crouched down to look closer. The prints led toward the forest, then just stopped. No returning prints, no trail, just gone. When I mentioned it to Mr. Harper later that week over the phone, he paused for a long moment before saying, "If you hear children playing at night, don't go outside." I laughed again, waiting for him to clarify, but he didn't. He just hung up. That night, I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. to the sound of giggling. It was faint, coming from the woods beyond the tree line. At first I thought it was my imagination, the kind of half-awake dream state where sounds blend into thoughts. But then I heard it again. Laughter, high-pitched, childlike, and it was closer this time. I went to the window and looked out. The moonlight was bright enough to make the yard visible. I could see the trees shifting in the wind. But between the movement, I caught something. A shadow, small, standing still, looking right up at my window. I blinked. It was gone. My skin prickled as if the air in the room suddenly turned colder. I backed away from the window and told myself not to be stupid. Montana nights play tricks on you. Coyotes, echoes. I tried to sleep again. But just before dawn, I woke one last time to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Soft, bare, slow. And then a whisper. So faint, I almost didn't catch it. It came right outside my door. "Can we come in now?" When I looked the next morning, there were handprints on the glass pane of my front door. Tiny ones, smudged across the glass like someone had pressed their palms there again and again, trying to peek inside. Except the prints were on the inside of the glass. I didn't sleep the next night. How could I, after seeing those prints inside the glass? The house felt different after that. The air seemed heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every floorboard creak made me flinch. Every gust of wind scraping across the windows made my heart pound faster. By morning, I convinced myself I'd overreacted. Maybe it was condensation. Maybe I had somehow touched the glass the night before without realizing it. My mind was looking for patterns that weren't there. At least, that's what I told myself. To distract my thoughts, I decided to explore the property. The woods behind the house stretched down toward a narrow creek, a ribbon of dark water that twisted through the trees. I followed it for a while, noticing how silent everything was. No birds, no wind, just that low, constant hum of the creek's current. And then, halfway down the bank, I found something. A small wooden cross, half buried in the mud. Someone had carved a name into it, but it was almost worn away. Ellie, 1979. I stared at it for a long time. The wood looked old, but the ground around it didn't. It looked disturbed, as if someone had been digging there recently. I felt something move behind me, a soft splash in the creek. When I turned, no one was there, only the ripples. That night, I pushed a chair under the front door handle before going to bed. I kept my phone beside me, flashlight on the nightstand, volume turned all the way up. At exactly 3 a.m., I heard it again, that faint musical giggling. But this time, it wasn't outside. It was coming from the hallway. I held my breath. The sound was slow, like tiny feet padding across the floorboards. Then something tapped on my bedroom door. 3 soft knocks. My throat went dry. I tried to speak, to say who's there, but the words wouldn't come out. The tapping came again. Then a whisper. "We saw you by the creek." Every hair on my neck stood on end. I reached for the flashlight and aimed it at the door. Nothing. But just as I started to relax, I saw it. A shadow slipping away under the crack of the door like smoke retreating into the dark hallway. I jumped out of bed, yanked open the door, and froze. Tiny wet footprints led down the hall, across the wooden floor, leaving a trail toward the staircase. They glistened under my flashlight beam. Small, bare feet, dripping water. When I followed the prints down to the living room, I found them ending right at the front door. But the door was still locked. I unlocked it, stepped out, and found the air icy cold. The moon hung low and yellow, and the trees swayed without sound. For a second, I thought I saw movement by the edge of the woods, a small shape standing there, unmoving. It looked like a little girl. Long hair, bare feet, just standing in the fog. Ellie? The name came out before I even realized it. The figure tilted her head slowly, unnaturally, like her neck was stiff, and then she raised one hand and waved, not friendly, almost mechanical. And when I blinked, she was gone. The next morning, I called Mr. Harper again. He didn't answer the first few times. When he finally picked up, I demanded to know what the hell was going on. There was a long silence on the line. Then he sighed. "You saw them, didn't you?" "Who? What are they?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "You need to stay out of the creek. That's where it started. The children drowned there. 3 of them. It was a long time ago." "You're saying this place is haunted?" "Haunted isn't the right word," he whispered. "They're waiting." Then he hung up again. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about his words. They're waiting. Waiting for what? Or for who? I went back downstairs and checked every lock, every window. Everything was shut tight. Still, the house felt alive, like it was breathing with me. At 3:17 a.m., the clock in the hallway started ticking louder. Tick, tick, tick. Then it stopped. The silence was suffocating. Then, from the dark corner of the room, a faint dripping sound. Water. I followed it with the flashlight and saw something that froze me where I stood. 3 small handprints, wet and fresh, slowly forming on the wall in front of me. No one was there. And in that dead silence, a child's voice whispered behind me, "We can come in." By the 3rd night, I was already losing sleep. Every creak in the house made my pulse quicken. Every shadow felt too dark. Even my reflection in the window started to look like a stranger staring back. The day went by quietly. Too quietly. I tried to work from my laptop in the kitchen, but I couldn't focus. Every now and then, I'd hear a faint drip, like water leaking somewhere, but I could never find the source. I checked all the faucets, the pipes under the sink, even the roof gutter outside. Everything was dry, but the sound never stopped. It just moved. By evening, I could hear it near the hallway, a soft, slow dripping, as if someone was walking around with wet hands. When the sun began to set behind the trees, the whole house turned a deep orange and the air felt heavy again. I stood by the window, staring at the edge of the forest. The fog was thicker that night, swallowing the trees one by one. And then I saw it. 3 small shapes, standing by the creek, motionless. At first, I thought they were just shadows cast by the trees, but then one of them moved. A hand, lifting slowly, pointing toward me. I stumbled back, heart slamming in my chest. The shapes didn't move closer, didn't vanish, just stood there, their outlines shimmering faintly in the fog. I shut the curtains and locked every door again, but I knew deep down, locks wouldn't matter. Around 3:10 a.m., I woke up to the sound of running water. It was loud, too loud, like someone had turned on every faucet in the house. I jumped out of bed and rushed toward the bathroom. The light flickered as I opened the door. The bathtub was full, brimming with dark water, rippling as if something was moving underneath. I reached for the faucet to turn it off, but it was already off. And then I heard it, a faint splash, followed by a giggle. "You shouldn't have gone to the creek!" The voice came from behind me. I spun around, no one there, but I could see the mirror fogging up and words slowly writing themselves across the glass. "Let us in!" My breath caught in my throat. I backed away, slipping on the wet floor. The lights went out. Only moonlight filtered through the small window, pale and silver. And then from the dark water in the bathtub, a small hand broke the surface, pale, wrinkled, followed by another, and another. 3 small heads slowly rose from the water, eyes black as ink, skin bluish white, mouths opening but no sound coming out except the gurgle of trapped air. I screamed and stumbled out of the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. I could hear the water splashing, the sound of wet feet hitting the floor. They were coming out. I ran downstairs, grabbed my car keys, but when I tried to open the front door, it wouldn't move. The chair I had used to block it before, it was gone. Something whispered right next to my ear. "You locked us out before." The sound came from behind me. I turned, nothing. Then the lights flickered again, and for a split second, I saw them, 3 soaked, shivering children standing in the hallway. Their faces were pale, lips purple, eyes hollow. Water dripped from their hair, soaking into the floor. The smallest one stepped forward and whispered, "It's your turn." The air grew colder. My breath fogged in front of me. The walls began to drip, dark water running down as if the whole house was breathing. I tried to back away, but my feet wouldn't move. Something cold wrapped around my ankle. Small fingers, tightening. I screamed again, kicked free, and ran toward the back door. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I sprinted through the fog until I reached my car, threw myself inside, and locked the doors. I sat there for what felt like hours, shaking, staring at the house. The upstairs light flickered on and off, once, twice, then stopped. And in the window of my bedroom, I saw 3 silhouettes, small, still, watching me. When I started the car, the radio turned on by itself. Static hissed through the speakers. Then, a soft child's voice came through, the same one I heard by the creek. "You can't leave yet." The car dead. When morning came, I was still sitting there, engine dead, body frozen in fear. The fog had cleared. The house looked peaceful again, quiet, almost innocent. But on the inside of my windshield, written in tiny, muddy handprints, were 3 words. "See you tonight." I didn't remember how I got back to town that morning. My car had stalled outside the house, but when the sun rose, the engine started as if nothing had happened. I drove straight into Helena, barely breathing the entire way. Every mile I put between me and that house felt like a victory. But even as I reached the small motel off the highway, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. The woman at the reception noticed how pale I looked. "You okay, honey?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just long drive." She gave me room 12, a small, dimly lit room with peeling wallpaper and the faint smell of cigarettes. I locked the door, shut the curtains, and collapsed on the bed. I hadn't slept in 2 nights. Exhaustion finally pulled me under. But I didn't dream. At least not the way normal people dream. I saw the creek. The water was black, reflecting no light. The 3 children stood in the middle, holding hands, staring straight at me. Their lips didn't move, but I could hear them, clear as if they were whispering right into my head. "You shouldn't have left us." When I jerked awake, it was still dark. My throat was dry, my hands trembling. The motel clock read 3:17 a.m., the same time, always the same time. The faucet in the bathroom was dripping. Drip, drip, drip. I turned on the light. It flickered twice before staying on. I leaned over the sink, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked tired, hollow-eyed, but there was something else. Behind me. For a split second, I saw them, 3 small wet shapes standing in the corner of the bathroom. When I turned around, there was nothing, only the faint smell of stagnant water. I didn't go back to sleep after that. The next day, I went to the local records office downtown. I had to know what happened, who those kids were. It took hours of searching old newspaper archives, but I finally found it. July 1979, tragedy at Willow Creek. 3 siblings drowned in the creek behind their family home. Their mother had gone missing 2 days later. The article didn't say much, no photos, no names besides one I already knew, Ellie, the youngest. But one sentence stuck out. Neighbors claimed the mother believed the creek was cursed, that it wanted children. My stomach twisted as I read it again and again. That same creek, that same house. When I left the office, the sky had turned gray. The wind carried the smell of rain. I got into my car, but before I could start it, I noticed something on the passenger seat. A wet handprint. Small, fresh. I stared at it for a full minute, too scared to touch it. Then the radio crackled to life. Static, again. Then a faint whisper came through. That same soft, girlish voice. "You came back for us." My blood ran cold. "No, I didn't," I whispered. The voice replied, calm, almost playful. "But you will." The engine suddenly roared to life on its own. The headlights flickered, and then I saw it. In the rearview mirror, sitting in the back seat, was Ellie. Her hair hung wet over her face, her eyes black and glassy. Water dripped from her chin onto the upholstery. She tilted her head slowly and smiled, the same crooked, impossible smile I saw in the woods. I screamed and flung open the door, stumbling into the street. The car lights blinked twice, and then the engine died again. The street was empty. She was gone. Or maybe she never was in the car at all. By evening, I was back at the motel, shaking uncontrollably. I packed my things, ready to leave Montana for good. But when I zipped my bag, I noticed something on the motel wall. Faint, almost invisible scratches. When I leaned closer, my heart nearly stopped. There were 3 words carved into the paint. "Come home now." That night, no matter how far I drove, I couldn't get away. Every road I took curved back toward the forest. The GPS kept rerouting me, the same message flashing again and again. Route recalculating, Willow Creek Road. It was past midnight when I realized the truth. The children weren't haunting the house. The house was haunting me. The trees parted as the road curved downhill, and there it was, the white farmhouse, perfectly still, waiting. The porch light flickered on as I pulled into the driveway, as if it knew I was coming. My hands were trembling as I got out of the car. The night was dead silent, not even crickets, just that low hum of the creek in the distance. The front door was already open. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. The boxes, the chair, even the damp handprints on the glass. But there was something else now. A faint humming sound, like children singing a lullaby from somewhere deep inside the house. I stepped forward, the floorboards groaning under my feet. And then I heard her. "Welcome home." The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. By the time I woke up that morning, the creek behind the motel had turned into a violent river, thrashing against the trees, dragging pieces of the forest away. The whole building groaned with every gust of wind, as if the foundation itself was slowly giving up. I could hear the rain hammering against the old tin roof like 1,000 fingers tapping in anger. The motel's hallway smelled of wet wood and rust. My footsteps echoed softly as I walked toward room 9 again. I didn't know why I was drawn to it. It was like something was calling me there. The door was half open this time. I didn't leave it that way. I pushed it slowly. Inside, the air was cold and damp, like the room had been underwater for days. The carpet squished beneath my shoes. The sound made my stomach tighten. When I looked down, I realized I was standing in an inch of water. But the strangest part? The water wasn't coming from anywhere. The ceiling was dry, no leaks, no broken pipes. It just sat there, shimmering, still, and ice cold. I stepped back, heart thudding. My reflection rippled faintly across the surface, and for a split second, it smiled back at me. I froze. Then I heard it again, the voice, a child's whisper, this time clearer than ever. "Don't leave us again." I turned sharply, flashlight shaking in my hand. There was no one, but I could hear splashing, tiny footsteps moving across the water in the room. The air grew heavy. I could taste metal. The water began to move on its own, forming slow, deliberate ripples toward the center of the floor. The light flickered, and the smell of rot filled the air. And then, something rose. It wasn't a hand, not at first. It looked like a dark, shape-shifting shadow clawing its way up, dragging long strands of hair through the water. When it lifted its head, the face was a blur, like seeing someone's reflection on a foggy mirror. I stepped backward, hitting the doorframe. The thing tilted its head, the sound of gurgling water escaping from what might have been its mouth. Then it spoke in Ellie's voice. "You left me here." I screamed and fell backward into the hallway, the door slamming shut in front of me. I ran to the office to call the sheriff, but the phone line was dead. The storm had killed the connection. I tried the window, but the parking lot was gone. Only black water stretching as far as I could see. Cars half submerged, the motel now standing in the middle of a flooded grave. And in the reflection of that water, I saw them, children, dozens of them, standing shoulder deep in the flood, staring up at my window. Their eyes glowed white, their mouths were open, but no sound came out. Then, one by one, they started walking toward the building. The floorboards trembled beneath my feet as the water outside rose higher. I could hear their small hands slapping against the glass, leaving wet prints across the panes. And above the storm, a voice whispered again, almost inside my head. "The creek remembers."